Welcome to Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, brought to you by Byrne Production Services. Here, we explore the different ways business events can bring value to your organization, the latest technological advances in the event space, as well as providing you with actionable strategies to make a business event a success. Let's create an exceptional event experience.
Welcome to another episode of Production Value Matters, the business events podcast. Today, I'm joined by Naomi Tucker, a seasoned event management expert and the founder of Planners on Purpose. Naomi brings extensive experience in tackling industry burnout, enhancing productivity, and leading educational initiatives for event professionals. With roles in organizations like MPI International and event industry councils, Naomi has made a significant contribution to the event planning community. Today, we're going to be discussing crucial issues like changing the burnout culture, setting healthy boundaries, and the reality of achieving work-life balance in the event industry. Welcome to the podcast, Naomi. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So I kind of want to jump into it right away. How do you define burnout, specifically within the event industry, and what unique factors contribute to this kind of a high pressure field?
So, burnout is a point of utter and total exhaustion. And I think that with the event industry, many times we need to take a look at the language that we're using around of being high stressed and being pressured and experiencing overwhelmed. There are so many different terms that can describe what we actually are going through. But burnout comes when we are at a complete and utter total end, where we have this emotional exhaustion that just continues for too long, to the point where we are just done. We are so done. We do not have empathy for anything. We do not care. We do not have compassion for anyone or anything. We just want out. And that is typically what burnout is. It's when you get to that place of futility. And and you're just not, you feel as though nothing that you do can actually make a difference. That's where you experience burnout.
Yeah, it's interesting that you just sort of mentioned that some of the language that we use and some of the things that we do in the event industry. Every time I go to a networking event, I feel like the badge of honor is how busy one is, right?
Right.
So, it's sort of like in normal life. I say normal life. People say, the default answer is, "How you doing?" "I'm fine." "I'm fine" can mean a million different things, and
Um,
it's a hidden answer. And I think we do the same thing in the event industry, where we say, "Oh, how you doing?" "I'm real busy but good." And so that's sort of going into my next question, which is, how do we identify those early warning signs of burnout that managers and team members should be alert to?
yeah. So it comes with just the stress that we're experiencing. And so what I always tell people is be aware of the stress that you're experiencing, and let's try to break your busy down a little bit. What exactly are you working on? And are you busy but excited? Let's just say that we're super excited about a project that we're working on that's taking up a lot of our time these days. That really puts the conversation in a totally different place with the people that we're interacting with, because everyone is busy, but that busy isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a great thing. And one thing that I talk about a lot with many of my clients is, let's look at stress, because there can be good types of stress, there can be not so good types of stress. There's actually several different types of stress that we're experiencing. So let's really be aware of what we're carrying, so we know how we can actually work on it, deal with it, process it.
Mhm. And so when you meet event professionals as a coach, what do you find are their main issues or indicators of burnout among them? Are there any specific patterns that you're starting to see or have seen for a long time?
Yes, yes, because people typically are not able to keep up with the demand, with the work. The work is coming in hot and heavy. They're traveling from place to place. In between traveling, they're working on their next event. And some people can ride that wave really, really well. They thrive in it. It's amazing. It's great. And others, it really struggle to really keep up. They feel as though they're not necessarily prepared for their teams or prepared for the clients that they're working with. And that gives us the feeling that we're just less than, that we can't keep up. So it's kind of that flying by the seat of your pants feeling. And sometimes it doesn't feel good, but there's a lot of people that do really well with that. But there's some people that need some support when it comes to that, in managing how they get through. Other event professionals feel as though they're not able to think strategically. There's a lot of strategic thought that we have to have with planning events, whether we're leading teams or whether we're just independently working on an event. But when we're going so fast, we don't have the opportunity to actually think to think about the direction, to tap into those creative resources that we have, and that can be a struggle for most people. And another thing is that people feel as though they can't take a break, that they feel less than. They feel like they need to keep pushing, they need to keep moving. There's always that dangling carrot. Once they're done with the product launch, it's the next product launch that they're thinking about, and they can't take a break because that means maybe less money for their customers, less money for them personally, or it's just that they will never be able to catch up if they do take a break. So those are some of the things that are some indicators that I see amongst event professionals.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that that sense of never being able to stop, and how
Mhm.
that's driving. Certainly from the pandemic, past the pandemic, and well, through the pandemic, and then past the pandemic when things were coming back to live. That's something we've encountered with our clients and our colleagues, that everybody has this sense of, I can't let the ball drop, because if I do, something bad is going to happen. We experienced the worst nightmare that this industry could have
Mhm.
encountered, which was a complete and utter shutdown. And so there's certainly a sense that we can't stop,
Mhm.
because if we stop, something falls off the table. This is a terrible metaphor, but hopefully
Yeah.
I'm getting my point across, that that sense of pressure in the industry has not abated over the last couple of years. And
Mhm.
so, can we talk about some of the perhaps mental health resources in the industry, and like what types of support systems do you find are most effective, and how can companies make them more accessible to their teams?
Mm. So there are plenty of mental health resources in the event industry. There are so many people out there talking about mental health, which is amazing because the awareness is there. But once we get awareness, then we have to act on the awareness that we have, right? So if we're in a position where we're at an organization, or maybe we're running a high pressured company, then providing all of our employees with the resources that they need is going to be helpful. So that can come uh, with some of the employee support uh, resources that are there. Sometimes when you tap into some of those health resources, there are free conversations that you can have with people in regards to your situation. And that can be very helpful. Many people now are putting coaches in place in their organization because they know that they have high pressured environments. So if you already know that you're running that is the business, why not have someone always there available for that mental health support for those that are the in that are experiencing that in your organization. Also providing having a best friend at work. I know Gallup always does that particular question on one of their workplace assessments that they do, and I can't tell you how important it is to have someone who is a confidant at work, your best friend at work, people that you can actually talk to, because you can then really tell them, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. I am just so stressed. And they can probably help you with how you would maneuver through that. What I typically find is that event professionals feel as though they can't talk about it. We're okay with talking about it on LinkedIn, but at the end of the day, when it comes to our situation, our personal situation, it's really hard to reach out to someone. And so that's where I feel like we can do better is having that type of support. Who's the person do you that you call where you're experiencing a lack of empathy about your job that can help you get on track. And sometimes that's best friend at work, sometimes that's a coach, sometimes that is just the employment support that you have at your job, but making sure that people know what those resources are in an organization is going to be key because no one really knows about it unless you're bringing it up and making sure people know exactly what those resources are often for them.
Absolutely. I always encourage, I'm a member of some small solopreneur or agency owner groups. And one of the biggest things that I always say to them is in running these types of agencies is that you need a good lawyer, you need a good accountant, and a good bookkeeper, and a good therapist.
Yeah.
Somebody to be able to, because working with smaller teams or big teams, especially being a leader, you're really responsible for that team working well together. And so what's the expression about airplanes? Put on your oxygen mask first
Yeah.
before you help others,
Right.
which is I think a key importance to be able, because I think event professionals on all levels, whether they're through leadership, management, or boots on the ground, we all get into this industry because we want to be helpful, we want to be part of a team, we want to be driving forward on a mutual project or goal. And so that's, I think, where some of that pressure comes from, is that we're all trying to keep it all together for everybody else. But if we're not using those resources that are available to us through employers, or as I said, as an entrepreneur, who's your good therapist, I think we're doing a disservice to ourselves and to our organizations.
Right, absolutely. I totally agree too. And you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. That's the reason why, that the whole airplane quote that you had gave, that's the whole reason why they're doing it that way. And I feel as though if we need to make sure that we are feeling safe, we're feeling secure, so that we can have that esteem to be able to take care of others. I always like to look at, I don't know if you're familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's like this pyramid. It starts off at the bottom with your physiological needs. That's, hey, do you have a place to sleep? Do you have a place to, can you eat? But then it moves up, and the next one is safety. Do you feel safe? The next one is, do you feel like you belong? And then you have that esteem. I feel like our best work comes out at the very top of that pyramid where we have esteem, where we are aware of ourselves, we know how to take care of ourselves, and then that's where we're producing at a high rate. And burnout pretty much impacts us when we lack that safety, when we lack the belonging, when we lack that esteem. That's usually where our burnout impact is. So making sure that we're really keeping ourselves secure in those 4 areas is really going to be helpful to us. And really, if we're not, then we're always going to feel some of that impact, that grind.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So let's talk about setting boundaries. Like, what are some common challenges that ed profs face, and how do you advise them to negotiate those boundaries with employers or with clients who may have higher or more urgent demands?
Boundaries. I love boundaries. They definitely help. So with boundaries, it's all about keeping them. I feel like we have really great boundaries in theory, but then it's keeping those boundaries. One of the main ones is our calendar. I feel like our calendars are the most important thing. What is on our calendar is what's pretty much going to happen. So if you have back-to-back meetings every single day, you don't have much in your calendar for actually doing the work. And what good is that? So you have to structure your days and structure your weeks where you actually can do the work. So I always tell people, why don't we put that you're going to actually do that project, put the work time on your calendar and make it a calendar event and treat it as importantly as you treat those meetings that you have to attend. And that will really just help us get some of the work done because I feel like what happens is we're on the calls all day And then at the end of the day, oh, now we get to working when it's quiet. We have to take the time to do some of that work. So that's a big boundary in our calendars. The time length of the meetings that we have is also very important. Many times the default is an hour, but much of the time when you really look at what you have to say, you can get things done within a half an hour. So why not adjust the time frame of the meetings that you have in the calendar, especially the ones that you own? And I've been known to even go back to someone and just say, "Hey, I think that we don't need as much time. We're really good to go on what we have to say here. Let's just book it for a half an hour." Just those little half an hours can really help you get back to time in your calendar. Um, Another thing is just your time, protecting your time personally. I've talked to so many event professionals where they're working all the time, but then they lose sight of family. They lose sight of the things that they feel like they really love and they enjoy. Putting those things in your calendar also can be very helpful for a person too. And then there's communication boundaries. There's when people email us, when we email people, communicating with our clients. Many times that is just one big, huge black hole, black hole. And having some boundaries around that is what is very important. And that one can be a tough one because client is always right. We want to get back to our clients. They are the fuel for our businesses. But there is ways that we can set appropriate boundaries, still deliver that high service, and everybody is happy. So those are just a couple of them.
Excellent. And so let's just talking about sort of larger scale events now, again, because of the pandemic and teams getting used to working on video calls, as you said, about setting those meetings that are default an hour, that
Mhm.
there's a day full of meetings. I think this is actually increased pressure wise over the last 2 years, because now teams don't necessarily need to be in an office. Let's grab a boardroom over here. We now have this immense flexibility, which is a bit of a double-edged sword, to have those back-to-back hour-long meetings throughout the day with teams across different time zones and regions. And so, have you evolved any strategies for striking that work-life balance while maintaining that touch of service that I think we all need to do with our clients and with our teams?
Yeah, yes, I what it comes down to is really getting to know what your customer. I've worked with people, let's say on the other side of the pond that love they work different hours. They probably work afternoons and evenings. So knowing your customer, knowing when they're online is very important. And then designing your work life around that. So if it means that perhaps there's more morning meetings, then maybe some of the meetings that you do, those important meetings with that particular customer are in the morning, and maybe your afternoons are the work that you do. So it's really, really taking a look at that, making sure that you put your customer in mind because you're there to serve them, and then designing how that looks on a day-to-day basis. And it may mean, and this has happened with me, just running a global team, is maybe there's 1 or 2 days a week that I am up at 5 a.m. because I'm taking those 6 a.m. calls. And I'm stacked back to back because that's the day where I'm handling a lot of that business when I have to do our team calls. And then after that day, then I'm just pushing out the work for the remainder of the time until we meet again. So it's just designing it where it works for you and being flexible when it makes sense for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So, I think from an entrepreneurial point of view, from a business owner point of view, and there's some management teams who may be listening to this episode, efficiency is always the name of the game when trying to run a business or run a team. So, what kind of strategies do you implement to uh, improve that productivity and efficiency without hitting that burnout? I think some people mistake efficiency to be meaning, hey, I leveraged more. Somebody said to me recently that this business is all about leverage, right? We leverage our relationships, we leverage our expertise and our time. And
Mhm.
so, how do we how do we improve that productivity, get the most out of teams without pushing them to that burnout limit?
Right. So I would say being aware of, let's say, the work that we have to do. And when you're doing that leverage, what are you leveraging for? So what is the thing that you're leveraging for, and having that very clear. If we're trying to leverage time so that we can get more time to serve other clients and customers, then that continues to put pressure on the team. However, if we want to gain efficiency so that we can have a little bit better work life, then that has got to be the goal. And evaluating how we take on those, because when you do really well, you get more. You get more customers, and that's really great. So identify how we're handling that new business that it's coming in. Do we put it on that same person that can do a really great job, or do we hire out? It's just having those conversations as well, in the having those conversations as well. But being efficient is one thing that we definitely need to do. However, doing it in a way to not burn out our people is very important. So having ways that they can actually do their job well, and maybe even leverage technology too can be very helpful in making sure that people are continuing to be efficient in their work. But it's a delicate balance, and I feel like managers and leaders have to definitely keep their eye on it, know their people, know what their people are handling, know what their capacities are, so that when they have to do that dance of either putting more on them or taking some away, they can do it in full knowledge of where everyone is. And I think that's just the art of leadership, right?
Hmm. So let's go on that art of leadership, because I think that that is going to drive a lot of that cultural change within organizations. Like, how do you assist event professionals in enhancing their leadership skills to manage these high pressure situations more effectively?
I think with leadership, it's all about communication. It so much comes down to communication, comes to communicating our customers, being very transparent, open, honest with them, and then also delivering results, but then also communicating to our leaders and those that we are actually driving these results for is very important. Usually, if people know exactly what the goal is, how we're getting to the goal, they're more amenable, they're more able to be able to either cheer you on in the process or help contribute to that process as well. So then you have this like cohesive environment of support, that you end up building up within your teams. So it's transparency, it's having those open and honest conversations. I think just even now, just with the generational ranges that we actually are working with, people love transparency right now. They love for you to be authentic. Being an authentic leader, being very transparent is very helpful, but then being very direct on the things that we need to be able to complete would really help you when it comes to being an amazing leader and driving a good team.
Hmm. And so, what advice would you give other professionals in the industry who struggle with that balance of high pressure demands on their jobs and personal time? Are there specific tools and habits that you'd recommend that are particularly effective?
For driving efficiencies,
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, driving efficiencies and balancing that like the demand, right? Like
Mhm,
we've talked about efficiency, we've talked about the reality of the situation. I
mhm.
think if somebody's listening to this episode right now, are there any specific tools, and you even mentioned in the last question, like
Mhm,
implementing specific technology. Is there
mhm.
anything out there that like Monday.com has this great
Oh,
way of doing this or something?
yeah, there's so many. It's really hard to pick 1 or 2, but, uh, having having a really good task management tool that you use. So whether it's you utilizing, for me, I love to use Asana. I love to use, Todoist. Those are a couple of tools that I like to use in combination, one for business and one for personal. And it's more using that technology to just help keep you accountable, giving you notifications on some of those to-do items that you have to complete. But then on a team level, having that project management tool that is pretty much cohesive across your entire team can be very important, especially As event professionals, we're dealing with many different projects at one time. You might have different people that need to access those projects, making sure that there's a really nice tool for that. And there's so many in the event industry. I don't want to single so many of them out, but there's so many of them that are out there. And the key is really to leverage the tool to its maximum capabilities. And if functionality isn't there, really have a conversation with your account manager, see if it's on the horizon. They usually are fueled by customers' input as well to make some of these changes. But definitely finding something that makes life easy um, across across the board is going to be key. It's really hard to suggest a tool for that because many different strategic events programs are they're all very different, and how the teams operate are different. So finding someone that can really see what you're looking at and actually consulting with you on what the best avenue is going to be very helpful. Um, yeah, so I don't know if that absolutely helped. I don't wanna give out too many tools, but, I mean, we have great tools like Cvent, there's tools like Smartsheet that are amazing, so many other tools that you can use, to help you with that.
Yeah, anecdotally, I think that to your comment about there's so many tools out
Mhm,
there that, one of the things that we've encountered over the last 2 years
mhm,
is that everybody has been rushing to find cool new tools
yeah,
to use to make those efficiencies happen. But
mhm,
the flip side is that now it's almost like they have too many tools
yeah,
and you don't know where to put things. And
yeah,
the way that I put, like, in our organization, we have a platform for internal project management and communications, and
mhm,
we call it the central source of truth. And
mhm,
then we have a channel, which is usually email, uh, for external communications.
mhm,
So but we also work with a lot of agency clients who have, I swear to God, 15 different platforms.
oh,
And so what that does is that it splits conversations
mhm,
into different buckets. And you'll start a conversation in one platform and then get a notification of a task in
yeah,
another. And then another conversation's happening internally in another platform. And so that's adding to that sort of stressful
mhm,
environment, and on the project risk, because you don't really know, like, where was I when I was talking about that one thing that we have to action by Friday,
mhm,
and now I'm searching 5 different platforms. So my advice has always been, like, pick a channel, pick something that works, and as you said, you can always talk to the account manager for that platform and say, hey, it's got 9 out of 10 things that we want. When's the 10th thing coming?
mhm,
Rather than trying to fill that 10th thing with another platform and another tool,
yeah,
because then all of a sudden you have one of those, and there's a great meme going around. I think it's an ad for some integrated tool where it's like an elephant with, like, all sorts of different animals sort of
oh, yeah,
stuck onto it, and it says, does this your tech platform look like how your organization is working?
yeah,
And I said that to a client once. I said, this is your tech stack. We should talk about how we make that more
yeah,
effective.
yeah.
So let's look forward into the future for a second. And, like, what shifts or trends do you anticipate in the event industry that could potentially improve or worsen the state of burnout and work-life balance in professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. I do wanna go back to something you quick said, because the average is organizations have over about 7 tools that they're working with, and you can get technology burnout too, right? So I just wanna concur with you that it's important that we have a simple tech stack and then just set boundaries around the tech stack that we have, which is really, paralleling to what you were saying. Set those boundaries around the tech stack and really use it to its maximum potential because that's where you're going to get lots of efficiencies. It's going to be is what it is. That's why you see a lot of these big companies that they have, certain things that they work with, and it's really hard for them to go ahead and go to a different tool. It's because they have found what works, what makes them scale, and they really have to consider it a lot before they actually switch over to a different tool. So I definitely wanted to concur with that. You can get tech stack burnout, so go with what works. Nothing's going to be 100% perfect.
Yeah, and counterpoint to the counterpoint. There, we have a policy that if we implement a tool, that we must commit to it for exactly 1 calendar year.
Oh, that's a
That
good policy.
like if we're going, and again, we sort of look at it in those two veins. Like there's one that is like there's an operational tool, there's the central source of truth tool, and then the external communication tool. And we're currently evaluating one of those, but we're making those account reps work real hard, because I'm not going to just try it. I'm going to make sure that does it solve something in this tech stack and eliminate one of them? Or, and if we're going to implement said tool to avoid stress and burnout and all the things, we commit that we're going to go through a full year with this tool, and then we can reevaluate. But we don't ever like to try something and go, oh, let's jump on Slack to communicate for this project, because it doesn't make sense to us. We would like, if we're going to go into Slack, we're going to commit to Slack for a year, and we're going to make it work. And then at the end of that year, we can look back and say, here's all the things that happened over the year, and here's the things that made our jobs harder. And our clients work harder. And if it's more yeses than nos in than those two columns, then we decide to move on and commit to another platform for another year.
Yeah, I like that. And don't be afraid to like take on that that event consultant, because I do a lot of consultant work. So it's like, don't be afraid to take on that person who's the consultant and good at the thing. If there's somebody that's like really good at Slack, they're just literally an expert at Slack, and you want to expand how you use Slack, just go ahead. It's going to be worth the investment to keep you on that tool, help them to build it out for you to the point where you can leverage it the best way, and have it be just a year commitment, like you said, until you can reassess and then move forward. Because I think many times we use people that we currently have in our company to take on those roles while they're actually handling other things, hence continuing to feel that stress and burnout, where maybe we can just use someone for just a little bit of time in order to get us to where we need to be, and then, just part ways after that time is complete. So it's another idea.
So I always like to end these episodes with a practical tip.
Um,
So we have a lot of event professionals and experiential professionals listening. And so what practical tip would you give our listeners right after listening to this episode on how they can start to achieve better work-life balance and avoid burnout?
yeah. I would say recommit, take a look at everything that you have going on. Let's say take a look at your calendar, like we said. How can you leverage your calendar better? Can you shift some meetings from an hour to a half hour? I like to call batch some of the things that you do. And so what batching typically is that you do the same thing within the same amount of time. So I'll take something simple, like you have to review a whole bunch of rooming lists for an event. So instead of you doing that on Monday and on Friday and on Thursday and fitting it in whenever you can, maybe you just do your reviewing of your rooming list on Wednesday morning between 9 and 11. And then you do it for all three events at one time. You're in that, reviewing rooming list mode, and then it helps you to just get it done more efficiently. Whenever we move from task to task, we lose time. It takes us about 20 minutes for us to move from taking a call from a customer to getting back into figuring out our tech stack. That takes 20 minutes to just make that switch. So anytime we can put ourselves in a position where we're working on the same thing at the same type of things together, it puts us automatically in a state of operating with some more efficiency. So I would just challenge people to do that. Try batching our tasks, and then taking a look at our calendar and seeing if those things really need to be there. Do I have work on my calendar, the time to work, and am I reserving it so that I can do the work that comes as a result of many of these meetings that we actually are attending? So those would be a couple of quick things that I would suggest doing to help prevent burnout.
Yeah, I love that idea of sort of blocking out specific times. I think a business coach of mine many years ago, well, that was his first lesson when I had hair then, so you can tell how the stress has
Yeah.
sort of impacted me over the last few years. but he was like, put 2-hour blocks throughout your day, and fill them with things that you have to do, whether that's meetings or something, but keep those 2-hour blocks in chunks, because as you said, that 20-minute transition of, I just got off of a sales call, now I have to prep for a meeting and do a schedule or whatever it might be. That 20-minute brain transition of going from one mode to the other is extremely important.
Just to add on, knowing that you have to do that 20-minute transition, I was just going to add, do something fun. So, hey, I just got off a sales call. I know I need to, do the rooming list. Well, let me go on a brief 5-minute walk, right? That just brings a little bit more natural essence into your life. It just makes you feel a little bit better about what you're doing. That way you come back to that task a little bit more refreshed. So I would also do that as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Naomi, for joining me on the podcast today. And it was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it.
Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, is brought to you by Byrne Production Services. To find out more about Byrne Production Services and how putting on events can drive value for your business, visit byrneproductionservices.com. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Production Value Matters, thank you so much for listening.